Hello and welcome. My name is Eliana Betrez. I am moderating this workshop today on irrigation checkup and maintenance, featuring landscaper extraordinaire, Joe Varney. So a quick agenda that we're going to be doing, just an overview of it, where you are going to get to know Sustainable Contra Costa, namely our Cleaner Contra Costa Challenge and our Bay Run program. Then we are going to jump into some Contra Costa Water District resources. This workshop is co-sponsored by Contra Costa Water District. Then I'll introduce Joe Varney to you all, and then he will present to you all, and then we will have a portion at the end of this presentation for Q&A. So if you want to type your questions in the chat during the presentation, lest you not forget, or whatever works best for you, we'll go ahead and answer them at the end. And then we'll wrap up with some closing thoughts. So like I mentioned, I represent Sustainable Contra Costa. We are a community of educators, innovators, and individuals and other organizations interested in helping people live more sustainably and finding out what that looks like for them. Some of the programs we offer are workshops such as this one. So they're collaborations with municipalities or the water company, a lot of different entities, to inform you all of some really great rebates, resources, and connect you with really great people like Joe Varney. Some of the things that we do, so this would be one of our workshops. We also have a program called Sustainability Live, where we talk about specific sustainability subjects, and we bring in experts as well. We also host different regional events and networks. So we recently had our Contra Costa County Sustainability Awards and Gala a couple weeks ago, which was awesome. And then another project that we're working on right now is the East Bay Clean Air Coalition, which is featured in or centered in East Contra Costa County. Additionally, we have a youth team. They're called Sustainable Leaders in Action. They're high school and college aged students who are very passionate about sustainability. I work with them and they are awesome. So, and then our last program, which I thought was on the next slide, is the Bay Run Home Plus program. So Bay Run is the Bay Area Regional Energy Network, and they are an entity that's funded by the Public Utility Commission. And I just remembered it is farther down, so I'll stop there. Our main project at Sustainable Contra Costa is the Cleaner Contra Costa Challenge. This is a free online platform with over 80 actions that encourage you to be more sustainable. And I'll show you an example of what that looks like on the next slide. But one of the coolest features of this platform is that you can track your household's carbon footprint, and you can also see your progress and how much you've saved, whether it's in tons of CO2 or gallons of gasoline or gallons of water or even money. So this is one of our most recent counts of our savings overall for the Cleaner Contra Costa Challenge, which is awesome. We're slowly creeping our way up to saving $500,000, which is awesome. So there are different categories, actions, and resources for the Cleaner Contra Costa Challenge. Different categories include being energy smart, eating green and wasting less, being water wise, a special resilience category, which is great. And once you pick the category that you are interested in that moment, you get examples of different actions, and those can include things like skipping the packaging or recycling or making a meal plan. And then they have differing levels of difficulty. So another thing you can do is, shop smart, buy less. And there are a lot of just really cool actions. Each of those actions includes a step-by-step guide on what to do in order to learn about this action, understand what these actions are referring to, and based on your zip code that you include when you're signing up for the platform, which only takes a minute, is specific to where you live, which is really great and a really cool feature of this. All right, so a little bit about BayREN. So BayREN is a collaboration between the 9 Bay Area counties to offer energy savings programs with funding from the California Public Utilities Commission. Since 2013, our single family home program has served over 10,000 projects and given $21 million in rebates. So there are a lot of rebates depending on what home energy upgrades you'd like to do in your home. And if you're interested in learning more, you can visit bayren.org for more information. Next, we have some resources from the Contra Costa Water District. Like I mentioned, this free 3-part workshop series is co-sponsored by the Contra Costa Water District. They have a lot of awesome resources. So they have one for a lawn to garden website. They have a Facebook group if you're interested in connecting with other people about making sure about your water-wise landscapes. They have a really cool resource about gardening in Contra Costa County that'll give you ideas of good plants to use. And they also have a 7 steps to a new landscape resource. So these are just some examples of what Contra Costa Water District provides so that people can be informed and take those next steps into having a water saving landscape. Now I am going to go ahead and introduce Joe Varney, and then I will hand the mic over to him. So Joe Varney is the co-founder of Oasis Foodscape. He started gardening at a young age, inspired by his father. He received an environmental studies degree while working with nonprofit organizations to bring edible gardens and education to school campuses around Los Angeles. That sounds awesome. He has furthered his studies in horticulture and integrates his understanding of soil science and efficient water practices into his garden designs. So without further ado, Joe.
I should probably unmute myself when I do the huzzah. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that intro, and let me share my screen here. Can everyone see it? Sweet. So initially, it's a little challenging for me as a landscaper to kind of do the general, talk about repair and maintenance. So I'm kind of giving you more of the overall gist. And then if we have more specific questions, I'd love to kind of chit chat with that as well. So let me make sure I'm doing it right. So first off, what makes up an irrigation system? There's 2 aspects. You have the electrical side and then you have the water side. In our electrical side, we have our valves, our solenoids, the wires, and a controller. The image you see below are 2 different types of valves. The one on the left is going to be an in-ground valve, and the one on the right is a above ground. So if you see your valves above ground, they're most likely going to be the right one. If they're in the ground or in a box underground, they're going to be the one on the left. But that's really where the electrical part stops. You have electricity coming in from your controller, and then it goes right to our valve and either opens the valve or closes the valve. And then it'll basically open and close a solenoid on the valve. So that's our electrical side. Our water side is pretty self-explanatory. Comes in from the Contra Costa Water or East Bay Mud or wherever your point of connection is. Usually it splits off. One side goes to irrigation, and the other side will go to the house. So all of your water is connected. But yeah, the irrigation system is really just 2 parts, electrical and water. And we'll kind of get more into that. As we see, the water components are also like PVC underground. Not really a whole lot that we'll be dealing with. A lot of times we'll be dealing with poly tubing, which can either come in black or in brown, and then emitters. So at the end of our lines, how's the water getting to our plants? So just a quick to do things to make sure we're always checking. The first and foremost biggest issue is going to be if you see a plant dying, we have a problem with our irrigation system. Either it's getting too much water, too little water, or we have a leak somewhere. The number one cause of plants dying is usually water. But for me, I always kind of go through my systems and checks at least 3 times a year. For me personally, I like being in my garden, so I'm in my garden at least twice a week, always checking. But that's just me. I bring my coffee or tea and I walk around as it's watered. And it's really just as simple. I walk through and I kind of just make sure everything's good. But looking at my list here, in spring, we have clean the drip filters. So every drip system should have something like this that's attached to it. This is what we call a filter. And inside, if we open it up, is an actual little screen filter. So any micro particles that get through our water system, they get filtered out through here so that it doesn't clog up our emitters at the end. However, sometimes we don't put filters and our emitters do get clogged. So it's making sure we're always checking this one is very important. We want to make sure in the spring that we do have active water. We want to make sure that we're checking each zone that it does have water coming out. We want to adjust for head-to-head coverage is more for sprinklers. If you have a lawn or turf, the sprinklers is more of that aspect. For drip irrigation, we want to make sure that we're getting water at the end of each emitter. An emitter is, here we go, is something just like this. You know, this side goes into our line and water will come out here for our plants. So we want to make sure that is happening. We want to check for any leaks that we've noticed. And we'll get to kind of figuring out where we are signs for leaks. Anytime we have growth around our emitters, roots and plants do like to get in. Just like sewer lines, if there's a crack in the sewer line, roots will find your sewer line and get in. It's just what they do. So we want to make sure that there's no roots or anything near our emitter lines. We want to test our controller. For me, I have the good old-fashioned classic controller in my garage, and every spring I go and turn it on, make sure that it works itself, that the valves are working, and also that I can adjust the watering for the warmer months. And then as I'm going through this list, if I find any issues, I make notes of it and I go through and kind of correct those issues. The middle of summer is a lot easier. We're just going to reset the controller, right? Because I don't know for anybody else, but for me, when it was that 105 to 110 degree week, my plants hurted bad. And so I made that mistake of not giving them enough water. So you want to make sure that if it is getting hotter or if we're noticing a rainstorm coming in, that we do adjust our controller for our plants as well. Once again, I always check my filters and make sure they're nice and clean. I go through system leaks, once you clean out any overgrowth and diagnose any repairs. So the middle of summer is making sure that I just still have water coming out of the emitters. For winter, once again, I want to make sure if there's any repairs I need to do before the spring comes up. I do want to make sure I'm doing it for winter times. In California here, I grew up in the Bay Area. It used to rain a lot more. It does not rain nearly as much in the winter. So for me, it's, I want to make sure that I am taking care of everything, that I'm not relying on the weather too much. So I always make sure I check in the winter to readjust my timing, clean the drip filters because it's always a good time. And then one of the other big things I do in winter is I blow out my lines. Do I have a piece? We'll use this. So usually at the end of your polytubing, you might have, where do I got it? You might have a 1/4 inch line here. Let's see, make sure that comes out of this polytubing. At the end of your polytubing, you'll have a crimp somewhere here. So a lot of times when there'll either be a piece that holds it. Sometimes I'll actually put a cap on it. For my personal use, I use electrical tape because it's just easier. But if I ever needed to clear this line, I would just open this up, run my sprinkler, and then all the gunk and whatnot, dirt particles that get in here can just flow out. It doesn't have, we're trying to, rather than it flowing out from, oh man, sorry guys, rather than flowing out from this little exit, we're using this big, tube here to get all that dirt, all that particles out. So blowing out all that is very helpful in the winter. For places that snow and freeze, it's significantly more important because these tubes are mostly above ground. So they will freeze and, they'll crack, and then we have bigger issues to deal with than just making sure our plants are okay. So that's kind of one of the big issues, I would say. Let's see what else we got. Oops. So how do we check, right? We want to make sure we check our valve boxes when we turn it on. You see in the bottom picture there, that is our valve box as in ground. So you want to go through and either go from the controller, and I usually do both. I go from the controller to automatically turn it on, and then I also go to the valves themselves and turn them on manually, just to make sure that the controller to the valve works, and then the valve to my irrigation lines work as well. If we're noticing any cracks in the valve, or if you turn the valve on and water is spilling out, it's something that we want to look into and kind of check out to see if it's actually a valve or if water is just flowing through right now, and then once it's all filled, it'll stop. But those are our valves. The other issues are going to be wires and solenoids. That's the electrical aspect of things. Not a common thing if we're real go-getters and like doing it ourselves. I think the valves is a fun thing to do. The solenoids and electrical aspects are a little bit more complicated, but nothing that I can't help you with, or a nice YouTube video wouldn't be able to help you with either. For the irrigation lines, when we turn our valves on, we want to make sure that at the end of the line, we're getting water. Do I check every irrigation line? I do not. I will start at the beginning, I'll pick a spot in the middle, and I'll pick a spot at the end. And if I have the same amount of water coming out of each 3 spots, then I know that majority of my line is working correctly. For me, I do like checking it probably once a week, or twice a month. The biggest issue you're going to come across, or the biggest sign of the irrigation system is not working, your plants are starting to die. They're starting to wilt, they're starting to turn brown, they look like they are dehydrated. That's a really good sign that your irrigation system is clogged up, or water is not coming through. So yeah, what to look for: dead plants, unusual soggy or wet areas, areas that you're not used to be watering. I had a client one time tell me that she was watering her sidewalk. Very helpful, but concrete does not need to be watered, and we're just wasting water, and she's just paying more in it. So we want to make sure that we're aware if there's any unusual watering spots. If we ever notice streams or fountains coming from our irrigation system, it could be a misaligned head or emitter. It could have broken off. There could be a crack in one of the manifolds. So we want to make sure that we're just noticing what we got going on, and that, especially for drip, there shouldn't be any spraying of water. Everything should be very low to the ground. And then the biggest one, if you go to an emitter and there's no water coming out, that is a big sign that either the emitter's clogged or the line is clogged itself. So we want to make sure that we're kind of just checking, observing, and then figuring out where we think the problem could be. Oops. So this is just for fun. There are many different type of emitter heads. You have 5 gallons to 1 gallon to 3 gallons. The one I showed you earlier is a 10-gallon emitter. Personally, I never install any drip emitters that is less than 1 gallon. I usually, the lowest I will do is 2 gallons, strictly because people feel uncomfortable running an irrigation system for an hour long. And getting a gallon of water every other day is very helpful for plants. But I've noticed that some former clients of mine will adjust my watering because they think an hour is just too long. So I kind of make my own math calculations in my head, and I usually set the longest is 30 minutes. And so each plant, I will change the drip emitter, whether it's a 2-gallon, a 3-gallon, a 5-gallon, or a bubbler, or different types of drip emitters to make sure the plant is getting enough water. And so it's not, the water's not losing that aspect of things. Is there a right or wrong emitter? Usually I say no. As long as the plant is getting enough water, that's usually okay with me. So just troubleshooting. Where do we observe the problem is? Are plants getting enough water? Is there too much water? Does the controller turn the valve on? Is there water leaking from the valve when it's on? Why is my irrigation system coming on in the afternoon? These are just some of the questions I get, and they're, for me, I say they're easy, but I've also been doing this for a couple of years now. So are my plants not getting enough water? There usually could mean that there's particles, there's dirt, there's something that's clogging the line. So we want to make sure we kind of go back to where water is coming out. And then we kind of have that section where water is not coming out here, but we have water here. So we know somewhere in this gap, we're having a clog, we're having something plugging up the water. So going in, and you can always take these plugs right out of the tube and use that as a flush type of system as well. Is there too much water? It could mean that where my hose is connected to my drip line here, this could have just broken off. And so now you just have water shooting out from your 1/4-inch drip hose here. And that's a real easy fix. We just put another emitter on, or we cut the hose and figure out a new watering style or head that we want to attach to it. Does the controller turn the valve on? I've noticed it a couple of times. If you're having electrical issues, people will normally tell you it's the solenoid. In my experience now of 8 years, I've never really known solenoids to go out that often. It's always a possibility. I'll never say no. I usually will always check the solenoid to make sure it has enough voltage. But a lot of times if there's, the controller's not working, it's usually a wire inside that runs from the inside controller, if you have one, to your valves themselves. And that can be an easy solution, is you getting a voltage reader, an ohm reader, and kind of checking to see what output and input you're getting in. And that kind of gives you a little bit more of, is it a valve issue? Is it a wire issue? Could it be a power source? Is there water leaking from the valve when it's on? I just had a client who got brand new irrigation 2 months ago, and one of her valves are leaking already. One of the big things for me, you kind of have to know what you're buying. Rainbird is a great resource. They're a good company to work with. I find that their valves are made on the cheaper side. Now they'll work great, but compared to, I like Weathermatic, which is a little bit more expensive. It's more of a rather than residential, it's more of a commercial use valve. So they're built to last significantly longer, but because of that, their price is higher. Rainbirds, I rarely have issues with them unless come from the factory itself. So valves are always good, but just like anything, you pay for what you get. I do feel bad about having to go replace her valve, even after 2 months of it being installed, but unfortunately there's a crack in it, and that's just kind of what happens. If that is an issue, then we have to replace the valve altogether, so that when the valve does come on, we're not losing more water than we're putting out. And then, why is my irrigation system coming on in the afternoon? I don't know about anyone else, but I experience blackouts from our wonderful electric company. When blackouts occur, sometimes the controller computer does not save the data, so it will reset or it'll pause. So for me, one time, I had a blackout for 6 hours. The controller came on saying it was the exact same time as right before the blackout. So that means that everything else based off that timing is going to be different. So for an irrigation controller timing issue, it's going to be reprogramming the controller itself, making sure that we're on the right time. While we're doing that, I always double check and make sure that my systems are all correct, that my watering time's accurate. If I need to adjust anything, we do it through the controller as well. Replace broken valves, reprogram controller, flush system. So where to find resources? I love going to Horizon Irrigation. They are a strictly irrigation company. There's one out in Concord. Is there another one? I'll look here in a moment to see if there's one out in Pittsburgh or Antioch. They do have one down in Dublin or San Ramon, and they are strictly an irrigation company. I do find them to be very helpful. There has been times where they've recommended people to me that I might need a little extra help with. Usually a lot of times you have contractors that are shopping as well. There's been in the aisle, I've talked to other contractors and we help each other come up with different solutions, which is always nice to have a little bit of, a friend in your corner. Next door, I've noticed recently, you get a lot of people that give good recommendations. That's always a helpful way if you're looking for irrigation. Neighbors are always nice and they're willing to give you an honest opinion. That's always beneficial for me. Not all irrigation people are the same. I do irrigation, but I'm very new in the sense of new school. I don't do through Nextdoor as much. I'm much more word of mouth. So for me, you don't find me as much on Nextdoor, but you do find other good quality irrigation experts and installation people there as well. And then finally, you have YouTube. I've learned many things through YouTube throughout my life, but one of the playlists that I think would be super helpful here is the Rainbird drip irrigation playlist. I think the longest video they have is 6 minutes. As I go through, they're pretty straightforward and upfront about it. And a lot of the residential fixes or troubleshooting, I think that playlist can definitely help you out. It's also one of those big things for me. I don't like long videos. I like being short, concise. I don't need 20 minutes to explain a 2-minute solution. And I think Rainbird does a very good job with that as well. Let's see, find other resources. And that's really all I have. And I think that's it. So I know I talked a little bit quick there. And I kind of just went over general ideas and concepts. But I'm happy to open it up right now for questions that you guys have, whether you want to unmute and share. If you want to type in the chat box, that works as well. But it's going to be your questions from here on out, if there's any. I do such a good job. There's no questions. That's great. I like that too.
I have a question about something we're experiencing. I don't know if you can give us some suggestions, but this year, for the first time in decades, we have animals that keep chewing through our drip lines, whether we bury them or not. And it's never happened before. We've tried putting water out in little pans so that they don't have to chew to get water, but any suggestions?
My favorite is find your favorite hot sauce and go and rub the hot sauce across the lines. Usually after the first or second bite, they're pretty quick to learn that I don't want to chew into this anymore. That's my number one. Number two, it seems like you're already putting water out for the animals. So it seems like you're giving them the opportunity. I don't know where you're placing the water, if it's right next to where they're chewing up, or if there's one specific area where they're continuously chewing. Maybe making sure the water bowl would be right where that is. But I think for me, it's always using some sort of scent, either smell or taste, for how I get rid of animals that are causing issues in my garden.
Thank you.
Absolutely. I don't know where I'm sorry, I'm reading from the chat now. I don't know where the ends of my lines are. What do you do if you have clogs with inline emitters? So a lot of times if I'll answer the second one. If I have a clog with inline emitters, I usually will cut out my inline emitters and I'll replace them. As much as this tube is great, one of the big things people don't tell you about is it's not meant to last forever. It's not like hard PVC that's underground. So a lot of times if I do have a clog, you guys might not like it, if I can suck it out, try to get that pressure to pull whatever is clogged, I will do that. I've had some bugs and beetles will go in and then kind of create a little home inside of my tube. So there is times where you have to like suck the bug out or get the bug out somehow. For most residential people, I usually just say cut it and then replace that piece that you need that's clogged right now. If you don't know where the ends of your lines go, the easiest solution is just keep pulling it up until you find the end. If that's not something you're comfortable with, you're more than happy to reach out to me. And because we're kind of through this little virtual class, I'm happy to kind of come out there free of charge and just check things out and give you any tips or hints to help you out. Any work that needs to be done, we can obviously talk about that and go from there. But because we're in this class and we're kind of looking to do it ourselves, I'm happy to help us out there and get us a foot in the door in the right direction. Do you recommend inline drip line system, and how deep should they be? Do I recommend inline drip systems? So for me, I usually will start my drip systems from my valves. Where's mine? Water pressure comes out of the city's pipe anywhere from 40 to 120 PSI. Drip systems, either tubes here, my emitters here, they really don't want higher pressure than 35. If you don't put let me grab all my pieces. So here we have a pressure reducer. It comes in here, so it'll get down to 30 PSI, which is really optimal for our irrigation tubing. I do know some landscapers, and we're talking systems that have been put in for a few years now, don't do this. With poly tubing, I always recommend it. There's been a couple times in my life early on where I didn't put the pressure reducer on or filter, and I'll come out and there's water spilling out of one of my hoses because it was just too much pressure and it just popped out. So a lot of times you might see something that, how are we doing this? I'm gonna go this way. That we go from a pressure reducer, which is right here, right to our filter, and then it'll go into our line here. That is one system. The other system I like way better is a pressure reducer and filter built into one. And this gets down to 30 PSI, not nearly as bulky as this, a lot smaller. If you go above ground valves, you should be putting the hardline PVC anywhere from 8 to 14 inches underground. If we're talking about just the drip system coming off of, where is it? I just had it. Where'd you go? Where'd you go? Oh, here we go. If we have like a top like this and we need the drip system to come off of it, something like this, and screw it on. For this tubing, we always want to make sure the tubing is covered. I'm not going to say put it in dirt. Usually I will say put some bark on top, because when sun does hit it, it does start to degrade and whatnot. The longer it is in the sun, in summertime, it'll expand, in the winter it'll contract. There could be some cracks that develop throughout time. So having it always covered with bark, mulch, plants, something that kind of protects it a little bit is always beneficial. PVC line should be anywhere from 8 to 14 inches. That's a good recommended depth for this type of tubing. I would say 2 inches, 3 inches at max is how deep you want it to be.
So This is Elena, and that was my question.
Yes.
And so the reason I'm asking, actually, I have a bigger issue than all that, which is that my husband and I just moved up here from LA, actually. We bought a house that has, I don't know, several different sorts of irrigation systems somehow put together. And basically what we've done over the summer is just had somebody in to just clean out the landscaping, which was totally overgrown, and turn everything off. So a lot of it was lawn, and we just wanted to kill the lawn. And now we're in the position, excuse me, of wanting to replant. And of course, the first step would be to put an irrigation system in. And because we don't know exactly where plants are going to go and everything, we were told that an inline drip system was the best alternative for us, because it would water consistently throughout the entire landscape. And I don't really know what I'm talking about except what I heard. So I'm just looking for advice, really.
So first off, congratulations on moving up north. I lived in LA for about 5-6 years, and I had a wonderful time, but I came back up here. So congratulations.
Thank you.
The first thing that you should do, especially with, turning all the system off, I'd start turning each system on one by one to kind of see what works and what doesn't work. Especially now that things are a little bit more bare, there's not overgrowth. If you're noticing leaks, you'll be able to find them a lot easier now than you would before. For me personally, I would ask, what do you want out of your yard? Are we looking to have this yard be transformed in the next 3 months, over the next 3 years? Do we want it to be quicker, slower? We want to do it ourselves? Because that's also going to be something that we want to consider. If you want to have your front yard be all vegetables and fruit trees, then we want to make sure that the irrigation we're putting is for fruit trees and edible gardens. If we're looking more for native plants, then we want to make sure that we're putting irrigation lines for native plants. If we're trying to keep our our grass, if we want to regrow our grass, then we want to make sure we want to make sure we have sprinklers, that we have head-to-head coverage so that all of our grass is being watered. So the first thing I would say is kind of have an idea of what you want your yard to look like. And that's going to kind of help with how you go about watering.
So is this something that you do come out and work with people to design an irrigation system for them? Is that what you do for work?
I am an edible landscape contractor. So yes, I do come out and I design landscapes from hardscape to softscapes, water features and all that. There are a couple of clients I do have that I've done irrigation checks for and irrigation audits. And I go through and I tell them, hey, this is where our water is at. This is what's working. This is what's not working. From there, we can elect to fix the solution, come up with new solutions. In summer, I did help through CCC here. There was a individual that wanted drip irrigation for her yard out in Pittsburgh. And so I did come out there, and I usually, when I work with nonprofits and groups like this, I usually try to do it pro bono. Why? Because it's for the benefit of the whole community. It's not just me making money. I'm not in this business to be hey, I'm charging you every nickel and dime. No. I'm in this because there's a bigger cause to all of us here. There's something bigger going on, and I want to make sure that we're all being mindful and can get help where we need to get help.
So Joe, maybe it would be better if I talked with you offline rather than taking everybody's time like this, because we are planning to, I did apply for the rebate from the CCWD for converting the front to drought tolerant. In LA, we had all drought tolerant. That's what I want to do with the entire yard. We're here in Clayton. It gets super hot during the summer. I want to reduce water usage, and but I'm not a person who is like really into gardening, and so I want everything easy maintenance. So at any rate, as I said, I don't want to take up everybody's time. Would it be okay if I contacted you to talk to you?
Absolutely. And I'm happy to put it in the chat box, my website, and from there you can find all my contact information.
Okay,
So
great.
I'll put that up. And I do have like a little survey online if you want to fill that out.
Okay.
My consultation fees are $200, but like I said before, because we're a part of this group, just mention that, hey, you know, I was in our virtual class, and I'll waive the $200 to come out and kind of check things out.
Thank you so much. I think I would really learn a lot from talking to you, and I really need to learn a lot.
You know, and that's, I'm a hands-on learner. I used to be a science teacher, and so for me, the biggest, most important thing was making sure we were always doing labs. As much as reading the book is always helpful, science books are never that interesting, even when they are interesting. So doing things hands-on, making sure that we're practicing, feeling comfortable with it is the best way to kind of, for me, to learn. So I'm happy to come out there and help you out.
Okay, that would be great. Thank you. I will contact you and set something up.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And that is my website. And let me just, oops, where did you go? There it is.
Let's see, do we have any other questions?
I have a question, and I will admit that I missed the first half hour because I was late and then I couldn't get on. So maybe somebody's already covered this. But just in case, I'll ask it anyway. I read somewhere that you shouldn't have kind of mixed irrigation outlets on a same valve. And I'm not far from Elena on my knowledge of irrigation. So there's a reason why I was attending this, is to kind of learn a little bit better. Can you talk about that, please, Joe?
Absolutely. So in the irrigation field, when we're watering, we like to water by zones to make sure that each zone gets the same amount of watering. That's going to be the easiest solution. If, like I said, if we have native plants and fruit trees, we want to make sure our native plants are getting the water they need compared to our fruit trees. Fruit trees need a lot more water and a lot more often. So making sure that we are watering for zones rather than just consistent water across the board. Now, for me personally, there's times where clients don't want me to add new irrigation or run new lines. They want me to use what's already there. And this is usually where I start hitting my head against the wall because I don't know how they did it before. I had one client, I just redid his front yard, and he did not want me touching his irrigation pipes. And I said, hey, that's fine with me. The irrigation pipe went in a circle, in an S, and it wasn't anywhere what people teach nowadays. So there has been times where rather than watering per zone, I'll basically write down all the plants that are in that zone, and then make sure that the different emitters that I have can fit that watering too. So I have my 10, oops, you can't see that. My 10-gallon emitters are here. I have, here's a circular rotate. Oh, let me actually pull these out. It's probably more helpful for you to see. So I definitely have different emitter heads that I can put on different plants. I usually try to do watering by zone. Like I said before, so if you know my fruit trees need more water, I want to make sure they're getting the water they need without drowning my native plants. There are some succulents, and what is it? I have an indoor bamboo. My bamboo likes to dry out for a day or two before re-upping on water. For succulents, they're kind of the same way. They like to have a little bit of a dry period before getting more water back in. So I have, you know, many different variations of different, you know, emitters that if I needed to can fit that as well. So it's not just, you know, if we're choosing, and here are my 1-inch one.
I guess the question is, it's just that the reason that I also have different zones, and I'm trying to understand how it was set up, because Elena, we bought our house and it came with irrigation. But I guess the reason why then you don't want different kind of endings on different kind of pipes is just because they'll emit different kinds of flows and you're giving the same amount of water. And the concern is that you're going to rob Peter to pay Paul.
No, I would say, so right now, if I had a tube and I put both of these on, this would give me 10 gallons an hour. This will give me 1 gallon an hour.
Uh-huh.
And the issue, if this doesn't give me 10, it's not because this is giving me 2 gallons. It's because there's not enough water capacity. So there's not enough volume of water to get to the 10. If we'll take a hydrangea, everyone knows what hydrangea is, right? A hydrangea and a Japanese maple. Hydrangea loves water. Japanese maples like water a lot, but not nearly as much as hydrangeas. Japanese maples will take water in just from the roots. Hydrangeas can actually take water in from the leaves and flowers as well. So for them, there are different watering systems. For the Japanese maple, I can put, my 1 gallon drip emitter on and be totally fine. And for my hydrangea, I could do a 10 gallon drip emitter. I wouldn't, that's way too much water for the hydrangea, but just as an example. So if they were right next to each other on the same watering line, I have to be much more focused and think about it a lot more to make sure that each plant is getting enough water. Now, the other issue is when you're going to do maintenance for it, you have to remember this is only dripping 1 gallon an hour compared to 10 gallons an hour. So sometimes I had a client tell me, oh, one of my emitters is not producing as much water. It's because it was a different size emitter. So you have to, the issue with having multiple, there's a lot more things you have to think about. And so for inline, kind of what I chit-chatted with, I believe it was Elaine earlier, wanting to see what our ideas for our plants are, what the future of the yard is, and kind of adjusting our water to make sure that it all kind of works. If that helps.
Soaker hoses.
I love soaker hoses.
Yeah, because I figured that's the best way to do it. All right.
For trees, for any type of tree, I always recommend a soaker hose. Yeah, I will continuously. They do even have, so this is a 1/4 inch line. They do even have 1/4 inch line soaker hoses, which I use for my lettuces a lot of times. I always recommend soaker hose for trees. They allow for the dispersal of water rather than just one spot.
Yeah,
that's the big challenge for trees. Their roots are much bigger than smaller plants or ornamental plants. So I always recommend soaker hose, and I usually go around and I move the soaker hose every couple months.
Awesome.
But yeah, I'd recommend soaker hose too. Big fan.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Hey Joe, I have a question.
Oh, driving, love it. What's up?
I was at Orchard Nursery. I got my plants here. I got the plants, yeah. So first of all, I want to thank you so much, and you were incredibly generous. Thank you for the auction items, and we have people so excited to use your services. Thank you for offering to do like a free consultation with the attendees of this workshop. You deserve to get paid. Just a reminder, we all do at times. I wanted to I'm horrible with water because I'm very water conscious and think, oh, we all overwater, but I end up killing my plants. So I have a system that saved me called Rain Machine, and it knows the weather. So that will slow down, won't water if it's raining or if the rain's coming. So I just wanted to, have you had experience with other, and you're not being available to monitor the water? It's awesome. I guess my question to you is, are you familiar with other programs like that?
Yes.
The one I use is Rain Machine.
I have put controllers in. I have dealt with Wi-Fi rain machines, or what do they call it? Ground moisture levels, I think, is another one. I find hit and miss, just like our meteorologists. Sometimes they'll say, hey, it's going to rain today, and then it turns out to be an 86-degree day, full sun. Sometimes they say it's going to be a 76-degree day and it rains. The system I currently use is Ratio, and Ratio does give hooks up to the internet. It does say like, oh, your soil is already moist, because we do have a soil moisture. I do have a soil moisture sensor. I don't like to rely on it too much. It's hard for me to, I'm putting all the work in to make sure there's enough water. I feel cheated when I leave it up to the computer to decide when things get watered and don't. The biggest thing for me is I do my finger test. I put my finger in the soil. And I go 1 knuckle in. If I don't have moisture at 1 knuckle, then I go 2 knuckles. If I have moisture at 2 knuckles, then I'm good. If I don't have moisture at 2 knuckles, then I go all the way down. And that's when I know I'm pretty dry underneath. I do like the systems. I like the Bluetooth systems compared to the manual ones. It allows me to turn my garden on and off. But I have come across some issues where it'll tell me rain's in the forecast and it won't water. And then the rain is, the 3 to 5 minutes of mist. And it's like, well, that's not very helpful for my grass or for my garden. I just missed, 30 minutes to an hour of watering this morning because it was meant to rain today and it didn't rain. Which in the grand scheme of things, not a big deal if you miss 1 day of watering. But I do have some plants that don't do well with the heat. And so as there are days where it is hotter, sometimes my system doesn't water as much as I hoped it would, because it says the weather is not meant to get that high today. So I take a lot of those systems with a grain of salt or grain of sand. And I do like them. I like the Bluetooth. I like looking at my phone and being able to turn my irrigation system on from here anywhere in the world. I think that's really cool. And I do always recommend the Bluetooth versions and the Wi-Fi versions. How much do I rely on it? Not much. I'll rely that it works with the program, that I can turn it on and off when I want to. I won't rely on it when it tells me, hey, it's rain in the system, rain's coming, if that helps. I love she's driving. Tina, you are so great. I did it once in college, not college, in one of my extended grad school programs. It was great.
Yes.
Okay, Avery, hold on a second. Avery got a pressure regulator in theory should make sure the flow in the zone trunk is whatever is needed to have the pressure. So that should make it less tricky to have different emitters, shouldn't it? Yes. In theory, yes. So if we put this pressure regulator, it gets us down to 30 PSI, which then makes the water capacity less. So it might adjust it, but just because I got a pressure regulator, I can still put 2 different emitters on if I chose to. I don't like doing this. I really like kind of keeping everything on the same watering zone. Sometimes with already established irrigation systems, it doesn't work that way, unfortunately. So we do have to make adjustments. And so when we do have our pressure regulator, it gets us down to 30, 25, but making sure that we have emitters on is super helpful too. Because even though you have a pressure regulator, if you didn't have an emitter and you're just hoping that it'll drip from here, you're gonna get a nice line of water that can shoot anywhere from 4 feet to 8 feet. So we wanna make sure that we always have emitters on. And if it's the same emitter, that works great. Like I said, if we're choosing different emitters, it just becomes tricky on remembering which plants need how much water. Thanks, Elena. Appreciate it.
All right. Oh, Elena, you're muted.
No, I was just saying thank you back to Joe. I'm really looking forward to working with them. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you.
Do we have any final questions for Joe?
And if you do come up with any questions, just feel free to reach out. You can shoot me an email. And I'll actually just oasis@foodscapemyyard.com. And that is my work email that you can just direct message me to if you don't want to go through the website. Either way, just let me know that you're a part of this class, and I'm more than happy to help out.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. So let's get to our closing thoughts. First, thank you so much, Joe, for your presentation. It was awesome and super informative. I wish I had a yard.
I just want to say my company also, we don't just do yards, we do windowsills, we do small spaces too. We try to optimize all growing opportunities.
Thank you. Good to know. But if you'd like to connect with Sustainable Contra Costa, you can support our work by going to sustainablecocoa.org/support. Similarly, you can just go to our website, which is sustainablecocoa.org. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube. And then any questions or comments you have, you can email over to info@sustainablecocoa.org. And then just a reminder to, Joe, your email didn't come in the chat. If you want to send it.
Yeah,
again.
I noticed that I sent it only to Anna. So Anna was very lucky, but I will add it right now. Thank you for calling that one out though.
And then if you want to sign up for the Cleaner Contra Costa Challenge, visit cleanercontracosta.org. So, and Joe's email is oasis@foodscapemyyard.com. So I will leave all of this up for a second so you can record that down. I see some of you writing. And then thank you again to Contra Costa Water District for co-sponsoring our event today. So yes, I see Audrey giving a big hand for Joe. Thank you, Joe. This was awesome. And have a great Friday, everyone.
Thank you all.
And thank you to Contra Costa for doing this. Really appreciate you, Joe, and the organization. So thank you.